ESIA.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to stand on the established protocol. Just to say that this presentation will provide us the myths and the facts that the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway is not the cause of the flooding in the nearby environment, and indeed that the process had gone through what we'll call due process when it comes to environmental issues, using the lens of international regulations or laws as well as the national regulations. The next slide will tell you today what people think about, what science says. Please, the next slide. I'm communicating with those moderating it over there. Now, people think that flooding is new, that the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway is causing the flooding, that drainages should go to the ocean, not to the sea. But science is showing otherwise, that flooding is over 50 years old in Lagos. The Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway is not the driver. And that ocean cannot drain Lagos. The next slide will tell us where this coastal highway lies. A number of us are familiar now that the landmark is there. It's been established. And so, you already know it. We move to the next slide just to give you some background information. You will see kilometer 0 before the road was constructed. And then a number of us are familiar with landmark. This is the landmark area. And we do know that the coastal highway is passing somewhere around here. And indeed, you can see the development along the alignment. And then here is also part of the alignment that was free. The next slide will also give you further perspective of what had been. And so this is the natural location of this Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Move to the next slide, please. Now, recognizing the location of this proposed project back then, there was a need to do the ESIA. The project proponents, the federal government recognized that there is a need to do the EIA. And the EIA was now registered, the process was registered, an application was sent to the Federal Minister of Environment, who provided the scope that we followed. And they worked with us in the field, just as other stakeholders worked with us. Just to let you know that when the Federal Minister of Environment is coming, other relevant government levels are part of what we do. And so that slide gives you what we had done. The myth is that, it is superficial. The regulatory steps were bypassed. It lacked community input. That is not so. Just to let you know that we went through a whole lot of multi-stage processes. There were so many experts that were involved in this very assignment. The long and short of it is that it went through the relevant regulatory sequence. And to emphasize that the process was robust, evidence-driven, and fully compliant with Nigerian environmental laws. The next slide will show you that we went through a whole broad realm of stakeholder engagement. And this slide is showing that. Move to the next slide, please. The next slide will also tell you that even the Honorable Minister had gone to the media to also talk about this. Back then, the members of the National Assembly visited, provided their perspective into this. Move to the next slide. What about the royal fathers and other stakeholders? They were part and parcel of this. And indeed, there was a review of the draft report that was published by the Federal Ministry of Environment for 21 days before we had this review. Move to the next slide, please. This gives you an idea of the entire processes that we went through, starting from project initiation, baseline studies, decision, and then the engineering ESIA integration, because there was a need to reinform the conceptual designs based on the what we saw in the field. Then the assessment was done, the regulatory review and approval, and then the lender's perspective came into the picture. Just to let you know that lenders are not Nigerian, they are international eyes. They want to support whatever project they have interest in, and so they tick all the boxes that they had actually outlined. And then, of course, construction preparedness, and then actual construction started. The next slide will tell you that have we gone through the entire processes. An ESIA certificate was obtained. But before this certificate, just to let you know, I just told you we had done the review. What followed it was a provisional approval for the fact that it meant largely what regulators wanted. And so there was a provisional approval, and then the project started. Just to let you know that preliminary site clearing and geotechnical surveys are allowed before approval. Surveys are not construction, as emphasis. Approval proceeded full execution. And indeed, what you see here is still there on the platform of the Federal Ministry of Environment when it was disclosed. Move to the next slide, please. The next slide also will tell you that we went as far as developing this digest to create that local level understanding of what the project was all about. Move to the next slide, please. The next slide will tell you that the myth is that, there was no ESIA. The project skipped environmental approval. Work started before approval. That myth is very dangerous. Why? It convinces people no safeguards exist. It erodes trust in environmental science. It fuels false claims about regulatory failure. It undermines public confidence in infrastructure safety, and indeed, it distracts from the real flood drivers Lagos must face. The ESIA misinformation doesn't just distort facts, it harms public trust in the science that protect them. We want to understand that. Elsewhere, people have this tornado myth, and they suffer the consequences. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, the entire processes, we went through all of that. Move to the next slide, please. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, interestingly, I'm not too sure of any project that has attracted the kind of attention this has gotten. And so, the journey of sustainability in Nigeria, this project has further deepened it. A number of us are familiar with what ESIA is all about now. But it wasn't so before. The Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway didn't just follow the ESIA process. It made ESIA visible, made it understood, and indeed, to be publicly demanded from even other projects. Now, even if we believe in the myths that we're talking about, I would like to tell you, go to the next slide, the fact that we must bear in mind that NIMET 2026 data now confirm that Lagos rainfall intensity has increased by up to 25%, with annual total exceeding what it had never been. And then IPCC projection is also showing that, look, we are at a precarious condition and we must do something. What Lagos cannot change, ladies and gentlemen, is that Lagos cannot change this geology. Lagos cannot change the tidal locking. Lagos cannot change its location close to the sea, and indeed, Lagos cannot change rainfall intensity. But are there things we can do? Certainly. The next slide also shows you that there have been challenges, even within Areas bordering the corridor, flooding. Move to the next slide. The next slide further depicts that, look, the Ethiopia local government had issues with flooding. This was picked from the study Lagos State Climate Risk Assessment Comprehensive Report 2021, and it depicts some of the challenges that the location had faced. Move to the next slide, please. Some people will say the highway wasn't flood everywhere. No, it cannot worsen the ones in Ikeja, neither the one in Agege. Is it Mushi, Bagada? Just name it. It's not possible. Move to the next slide. Lagos flooding is isolated? No. Abidjan has seen this kind of flooding within the same period that we have seen. Accra has seen this. I mean, other West African countries have witnessed this. This proof flooding is regional, not project specific. Move to the next slide. And interestingly, what the Lagos State Climate Risk Assessment Comprehensive Report also forecasted what could happen. And so we want to take note of. Move to the next slide, please. Now, in terms of the drainage, that drainage should go to the Atlantic Ocean. The highway is blocking it. No. Lagos has never drained into the Atlantic, not in 1903, not in 1960, and certainly not today. Move to the next slide. The next slide will tell you that what the project itself has actually done. Prevent ocean incursion, reinforces Lagos' 100-year-old lagoon discharge strategy because of the technology that is being used. Move to the next slide. The next slide will give you some perspective on the comparative resilience. No ocean defense, clogged drains, tidal backflow. That was the situation before the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. With the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, ocean protection, underground drains, flap gates, elevated pavement highway, in fact, has provided resilience for all of us. Move to the next slide. And just to demonstrate that, look, this is Lafiaji area. We were there yesterday. And the rocks you are seeing is protecting the shoreline. Those rocks came there because of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, because the sea was already even threatening. Earlier, if you see what you have that is said all gone, what you can see here, this was a nightmare for them. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, move to the next slide. I'll just flip through all of them just to say that geology, climate change, urbanization, waste mismanagement, governance gaps are the key drivers of this. Move to the next slide. Just continue to move. I will tell you to stop. We'll hold on here. Just hold on here. This is a nightmare. This is the new corridor, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. And because of our misbehavior, some of us, we are already clogging the drains. This is a nightmare. Why will it not flood? Why will the neighborhood not flood? Move to the next slide. Move to the next slide. Move to the next slide. Whatever we say, ladies and gentlemen, the long and short of it is that it has been identified that challenges in this location. What should we do? Waste management reform and operations, wetland protection and restoration, improve and integrated urban planning, and indeed full drainage master planning implementation. What about climate change adaptation measures, consistent enforcement and governance? We have also said we need to integrate green and nature-based ecosystem services into hard engineering solutions, including planting trees in public spaces. And that was what that Lagos Risk Assessment Report actually recommended. And just to add, that's one of the solutions. You can see we didn't say the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway is one of the solutions because it is not one of the drivers. Move to the next slide, please. We all need to be part of this. This must be implemented together, not in isolation, and targeted where geology shows the greatest conflict between natural flow paths and built works. So, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, move to the last slide. Flooding. No. Before this, it's a real threat. It impacts lives. We all recognize that. Homes, businesses, and the entire coastal communities. But science is our first line of defense. Tools and indeed projects like the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway protect us. Misinformation weakens this protection and mislead public, especially when you have armchair criticism and myth. Just like tornado misinformation, it will lead to unsafe ground rather. Let's stay focused on facts. Every ESIA exists to provide objective data, real risk, and practical mitigation solutions. And interestingly, every EIA has what we call environmental compliance monitoring. And the project is undergoing that. And the idea for that is to ensure that if you have recommended something yesterday and it's not working well, you retool because of the dynamics. And the project is undergoing that, ladies and gentlemen. Just to say that we all need to choose clarity and avoid confusion. We need to choose evidence and leave fear alone. What else? We need to choose solutions that protect you, that protect me, that protect our children. Can we all agree to do the work and move on?